Hello everyone, today I want to talk about how the People's Daily published an article that slammed American politicians over Nvidia. Also, Trump criticized Lai for Taiwan getting hit with a 20% tariff by the US, and the KMT's Chang Wan lashed out at the DPP government. They're still stirring up a big recall movement, but the dust is settling on the US tariff hike. On July 31st, Deng signed an executive order under the U.S. International Emergency Economic Powers Act and other laws, announcing tariff rates on 69 categories of imported goods and tableware. This has sparked widespread opposition and skepticism both domestically and internationally. The U.S. executive order specifies that Brazil faces the highest so-called reciprocal tariff rate at 50%, but actually, 43% of Brazilian goods are exempted. Syria is hit with a 41% tariff, while Myanmar and Laos are at 40%. Surprisingly, Switzerland is also subject to a tariff as high as 39%. South Africa and Nigeria are at 30%, India at 25%, and both Vietnam and Taiwan are at 20%. The Philippines, Thailand, and Cambodia have a 19% tariff. Most other countries, including the EU, Japan, South Korea, Israel, and Turkey, are at 15%. The UK and Australia, with trade deficits, have the lowest at 10%. Argentina, friendly with Trump, also has a 10% tariff. Unlisted countries remain at 10%. Notably, the US announced a 20% reciprocal tariff on Taiwan, higher than the 15% on Japan and South Korea. This caused a huge stir across Taiwan. People in Taiwan are digging up old posts, pointing out that on the eve of the US announcing reciprocal tariffs on April 2nd, Premier Cho Young-tai posted on Facebook, assuring risks were controllable and telling Taiwanese people to sleep soundly. No one expected just one night's sleep. Trump would announce a 32% tariff on Taiwan. Cho Young-tai's Facebook was flooded with angry comments, and the backlash was intense. The US set the tariff rate at 20%, and the new Taiwan dollar appreciated by 10. A 20% tariff means your exports to the US, which faced a 32% tariff, are still heavily burdened. This 20% tariff is higher than regional competitors like Japan and South Korea. Traditional industries on the island lament, worried business will shift away. Taiwanese leader Lai Ching-te is still stubbornly defending himself, stating the U.S. notified Taiwan's negotiation team in Washington that Taiwan's provisional tariff is set at 20%. This is due to procedural arrangements. Summary meetings between Taiwan and the U.S. haven't been completed. Thus, the U.S. first announced a provisional 20% tariff for Taiwan, with hope for a lower rate if an agreement is reached. However, public opinion in Taiwan has reservations about this provisional tariff, with real concerns it could become permanent. Taiwan lacks leverage to ask the US to lower the tariff, unlike Japan and South Korea, who have more trade clout. Last year, Taiwan's trade surplus with the US was $73.9 billion, making it the sixth largest source of the US trade deficit. In comparison, Japan had a $68.8 billion surplus, and South Korea, ranking 8th, had just a $66 billion surplus. Taiwan's surplus is much higher than theirs. This weakens Taiwan's bargaining position. The Lai administration seems more focused on politics than the trade war. Their first major recall campaign aimed to remove 24 KMT legislators and Hsinchu City Mayor and Cao, with the vote set for July 26, but all were rejected. Now, a second wave targets 7 more legislators, with the vote scheduled for August 23. Lai Ching-te seems more interested in political maneuvering than addressing the economic crisis. After the US announced the 20% tariff on Taiwanese goods, traditional industries already feel the impact. Online forum posts indicate nearby business owners are in dire straits. Most of Taiwan's main industries are OEM manufacturers. Outside tech, factory profits rarely exceed 20%. A 20% tariff makes continued operation almost impossible. The post adds that if you check online, it's still all about political infighting. Who knows how long this will drag on? KMT Taipei Mayor Chang Wan has also reminded the Lai Ching-te administration of this. With a 20% tariff, plus the 12% appreciation of the new Taiwan dollar, Taiwanese manufacturers' competitiveness has taken a huge hit, and losses are severe. He warned the government early on to be prepared, especially not to let Taiwan face higher tariffs than other Asian countries. Japan, South Korea, and the EU only have a 15% tariff, and even the Philippines and Indonesia have a 19% tariff, lower than Taiwan's. This annulled rate is disheartening for Taiwanese people, and the market is very worried about regional competition. Being marginalized, Pedon criticized the DPP government as derelict and incompetent. The government should guide the people, but the DPP previously stated tariff rates would be lower than Japan and South Korea's. Now, it's clearly untrue, a government failure. He said the Lai Ching-te administration should unite the people, but the ruling party actively launches large-scale internal strife, focusing energy on infighting rather than uniting to respond to tariff impacts. This is government incompetence. At this critical moment, everything must be done right. Facing tariff challenges, he urged Lai Ching-te to rein in and stop stirring up large-scale recalls and internal strife. Briefly, first, Trump isn't interested in Taiwan and offers no special favors. Taiwan fell into the category of Asian countries with a larger trade surplus with the US, so it's been placed in a higher tariff bracket. Second, Trump doesn't mind using Taiwan as a bargaining chip with mainland.
On July 31, U.S. Secretary of State Rubio, asked by Fox News if denying Lai a U.S. transit signals a preference for better China ties, replied that despite U.S.-China differences,
but we are entering a period of strategic stability. A mature foreign policy requires achieving a strategic balance of interests. After hearing what I said, it seems if Trump wants to show friendliness and have dialogue, I'll have to go along, and Taiwan won't have good days ahead. Meanwhile, China now seems to be implementing a guerrilla strategy. When the enemy advances, we retreat. When the enemy retreats, we pursue. China is storing up an offensive posture against the US, exemplified by targeting NVIDIA. Not long ago, the National Internet Information Office summoned NVIDIA to explain if there are any backdoor security risks in their AI-X20 chips, and demanded clarification. Then, the People's Daily followed up. On the 1st, they published a commentary titled NVIDIA, How Can I Trust You? Even the headline is eye-catching. The commentary said the H10 chip had serious security issues, leading to the Cyberspace Administration summoning them. Just how serious are these security issues? The People's Daily commentary described a scenario. Imagine new energy vehicles on the highway suddenly losing power. A patient undergoes minimally invasive surgery when equipment suddenly blacks out, where a supermarket checkout's mobile payment instantly fails. If a chip has vulnerabilities, hidden security risks exist. Once triggered, a nightmare could ensue.
It stressed that cybersecurity affects daily life and enterprises' survival, equating it to safeguarding national territory. If security fails, everything collapses.
We must protect our cyberspace and absolutely not allow compromised chips. NVIDIA responded, defending itself, stating cybersecurity is of utmost importance, and their major chips contain no backdoors, nor allow remote access or control. Analyzing China's actions targeting NVIDIA chips, they seem well prepared and escalating. On the surface, the US government's recent approval for NVIDIA to sell H10 chips to China appears to be a softening of Trump's stance, paving the way for CEO Jensen Huang's recent visit, during which he spoke very positively. China hasn't specifically targeted the H20 chip, but if you look a bit deeper, it seems like a strategy of advancing whenever the opponent retreats. Since Trump has made concessions on the chip issue, and there are even reports that the US government plans to ease restrictions on Chinese technology, China has instead gone on the offensive, targeting the H10 chip specifically to strike back. When anti-China lawmakers proposed adding trackers to American chips, in May this year, Illinois Democratic Congressman Foster planned to introduce a bill requiring the tracking of the after-sales locations of AI chips produced by companies like NVIDIA. He called on US regulators to set rules, starting with tracking Chinese chips, to ensure they are monitored. Chips must be exported to authorized locations, otherwise they must be remotely deactivated. The bill gives the US Department of Commerce 6 months to introduce regulations. At the time, it was said the bill had bipartisan support. Foster, who previously worked in tech, drafted this bill. This technology already exists, as many specialized chips have this function built in. Now, China is making its move. This forces anti-China lawmakers like Foster to give up pushing the U.S. Department of Commerce to introduce regulations for tracking American chips. Foster is a Democratic congressman. China's move also pressures the Trump administration, urging Republican lawmakers not to side with Democratic lawmakers in targeting China. To sum it up, U.S.-China relations have entered a delicate phase, and China is openly moving against NVIDIA. In fact, the goal is to break up the anti-China alliance in the U.S. Congress. Second, American companies are caught in the middle and risk losing their share of the Chinese market.